I remember the moment as if it happened yesterday. I was sitting quietly at the reception hall, surrounded by laughter, music, and the clinking of glasses. My son Daniel was celebrating what was supposed to be the happiest day of his life, his wedding. Guests were dressed in their finest, the ballroom shimmered with candlelight, and the air smelled of roses and wine. For a brief moment, I allowed myself to relax, to believe that after years of grief and hardship, our family could finally breathe again. But then my daughter, Emily, tugged at my sleeve with a grip so tight it startled me. She was only 10, her small hand trembling in mine, her wide eyes filled with a fear that didn't belong to a child. She leaned close, her voice barely a whisper, yet sharp enough to slice through the noise around us. "Dad," she said, her lips quivering, "look under the table." I froze. My chest tightened, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. When I finally lowered my gaze, what I saw made my blood run cold, an image so haunting it would follow me long after the music ended and the wedding lights went dark. When Emily whispered those words, the weight of our entire family history came crashing down on me. I should start at the beginning, because nothing about that day or the years leading up to it was simple. My name is Richard Miller, and I never thought I'd be the kind of man haunted by shadows at my own son's wedding. But grief changes you, twists you, leaves you suspicious of smiles that come too easily. My late wife, Caroline, used to tease me about being too serious. She was the light to my darker edges. Where I saw problems, she saw possibilities. Where I worried, she laughed and told me to trust in tomorrow. But tomorrow never came for her. Caroline died in a car accident on a rainy October evening, leaving me alone with 2 children, Daniel, my eldest, and Emily, my youngest. Daniel was 17 at the time, standing awkwardly in his high school football jersey when the police officer delivered the news. I can still see the way his hands trembled, how his jaw clenched to stop the tears, though his eyes betrayed him. Emily was only 3 then, too young to understand why mommy wasn't coming home, but old enough to cry herself to sleep calling for her. I promised myself that night that I would never let anything harm them again. The years that followed were heavy. Daniel withdrew into silence, burying himself in books and later in work. Emily clung to me with a desperation that broke my heart. I did everything I could, making breakfast at dawn, working long hours to pay the bills, showing up at every school event, but I always felt like I was patching holes in a ship that was destined to sink. And then Sophia came along. Daniel met her at the marketing firm where he worked. She was beautiful, confident, polished, the kind of woman who seemed to shine in every room she entered. He introduced her to me one Sunday afternoon, his eyes lit up in a way I hadn't seen in years. For the first time since Caroline's death, I saw hope in his face. I wanted to believe that maybe this woman could help heal him, give him back the life he deserved. But Emily never warmed up to her. From the beginning, my daughter kept her distance. She was polite, yes, but she would slip behind me whenever Sophia bent down to greet her. At first, I chalked it up to shyness. Children, after all, take time to adjust. Yet months passed, and Emily remained cautious. If Sophia offered candy, Emily refused. If Sophia complimented her drawings, Emily pressed her lips tight and stayed silent. I noticed, but like so many parents who are desperate to see their child happy, I told myself not to overthink it. Now, sitting at that wedding table, I realized maybe I had been a fool. The ballroom was dazzling that evening. Guests clapped and toasted, raising glasses of champagne to Daniel and Sophia as if nothing in the world could ever dim their joy. White roses spilled out of crystal vases, golden lights shimmered on the walls, and the band played smooth jazz that wrapped around the laughter like a velvet ribbon. Daniel looked radiant in his navy suit, moving from table to table, shaking hands, thanking guests with a smile that made me proud. But every time I glanced at Emily, my chest tightened. Her small shoulders were rigid. Her hand, tucked inside mine, felt like ice. She wasn't looking at the stage where her brother danced, or at the guests cheering. She was staring downward, her gaze locked on the white tablecloth as though something beneath it terrified her. I leaned toward her and whispered, "Sweetheart, are you all right?" She didn't answer at first. She just pressed her lips together, her eyes flickering toward mine. Then, after a long pause, she whispered the words that cracked the evening in two. "Dad, look under the table." At first, I thought it was childish fear, maybe she'd seen a bug or dropped her toy. But Emily's eyes weren't those of a child making mischief. They were wide, desperate, pleading. She gripped my hand so tightly my knuckles turned white. My stomach knotted as I slowly reached for the edge of the tablecloth. A voice inside me warned me not to, told me some things are better left unseen. But I couldn't ignore my daughter. Not after everything. I pulled the cloth back, and in the dim glow of candlelight, my eyes landed on a small white envelope lying just inches from Emily's shoes. It looked harmless enough, folded cleanly, almost hidden in the shadows. But the sight of it made my blood run cold, because Emily had known it was there, she had felt it before I even saw it. I reached down with trembling fingers and picked it up, my pulse hammering in my ears. The paper felt heavier than it should have, as though it carried the weight of something I wasn't ready to face. Emily whispered again, her voice breaking. "Please, Dad. Don't let them open it." And in that instant, I knew whatever was inside this envelope had the power to shatter everything we thought we knew about this wedding, about Sophia, about the fragile happiness Daniel was clinging to. The envelope sat in my palm like a living thing, as if the thin paper pulsed with its own heartbeat. Around me, the wedding roared on, laughter, the clinking of glasses, the smooth rhythm of the jazz band. But inside me, everything slowed. Emily's small hand clutched my sleeve. Her knuckles were white, her nails pressing into the fabric. "Dad, don't open it here," she whispered, her voice trembling. But I couldn't wait. Something in my gut told me this wasn't just some misplaced wedding favor. My fingers shook as I tore the flap open and slid out the folded sheet inside. The handwriting was hurried, jagged, as if scratched out by someone in a rush. "Table 6, add shrimp to the child's plate." I read the line twice before my mind accepted the words. The ballroom suddenly felt too hot, the lights too bright. My daughter, Emily, was deathly allergic to shrimp. We'd nearly lost her once before a single bite of a spring roll at a family picnic had swollen her throat shut within minutes. Since then, we carried an EpiPen everywhere. Everyone who knew us knew this. Daniel knew. Sophia knew. My eyes darted around the room. Waiters weaved between tables, trays balanced gracefully, their white gloves gleaming under candlelight. On nearly every platter, there was shrimp, glazed skewers, cocktail glasses with tails hanging over the rim, even a creamy pasta flecked with pink. It was elegant, beautiful, and for Emily, deadly. I folded the note back with trembling hands, shoving it deep into my pocket. My first instinct was denial. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe someone from the kitchen accidentally slipped the wrong note. But why was it under our table? Why addressed to our number? Emily tugged on my sleeve again. Her eyes, those wide, innocent eyes, searched mine for an answer. She didn't ask any more questions. She didn't have to. She trusted me to protect her. I leaned close and whispered, "It's going to be okay, sweetheart. I've got you." But inside, my heart thundered like a war drum. Across the room, I spotted Daniel, my son, my groom, laughing with two of his co-workers near the champagne tower. His face glowed with happiness, his smile wide and boyish, like the child I once carried on my shoulders. For a fleeting moment, I felt the urge to run to him, to pull him aside and show him the paper. But then I saw Sophia standing just a few feet away, surrounded by her bridesmaids. Her sequined gown sparkled under the chandeliers, and her laughter rose above the music like a practiced melody. She leaned in toward one of her friends, whispering something that made them all giggle. To the guests, she was radiant, flawless, the perfect bride. But when her eyes briefly swept over our table, a chill ran down my spine. Was it my imagination, or did her smile falter when she saw me staring back? I looked away, my throat dry. I didn't want to believe what my instincts were telling me. I wanted to trust that Daniel had chosen wisely, that Sophia truly loved him and would care for Emily as family. But the envelope in my pocket burned against my thigh, a silent reminder that something sinister was at play. The waiter approached with a silver tray, his voice cheerful. "Appetizers, sir. Shrimp crostini." My breath caught. The tray hovered inches from Emily's plate. She shrank back against me, her little body trembling. I forced a smile, waving the waiter away. "No shrimp here, thank you." His smile faltered slightly, but he nodded and moved on. My hand instinctively reached for Emily's hair, smoothing it down to calm her. But the gesture was more for me than for her. I needed the touch of something pure, something I could still protect. All the while, questions tore through my mind. Who wrote that note? Why target Emily? Was it someone in the staff? Or was it someone closer? The thought made bile rise in my throat. Emily rested her head against my arm, whispering again. "Dad, she doesn't like me." I stiffened. "Who, sweetheart?" Her eyes flicked toward Sophia, who was now laughing too loudly at a toast. Emily's voice was a fragile thread. "She always tells me I'm in the way." My jaw tightened. I remembered little moments, the way Emily refused Sophia's gifts, the way she avoided her touch. I had brushed it off as childish stubbornness, but now what if Emily had been warning me all along? The music swelled, and the MC announced the dinner service. Waiters began placing plates of salad on each table, the faint scent of seafood lingering in the air. My stomach churned. The note's message echoed in my head, "Add shrimp to the child's plate." I pulled Emily closer and whispered, "Don't eat anything until I check it, okay?" She nodded solemnly, trusting me completely. I pressed my palm against my pocket, feeling the sharp crease of the folded paper. Somewhere in this glittering ballroom, someone had tried to turn my daughter's life into collateral damage. And if I didn't act soon, the night meant to celebrate my son's happiness could end in unthinkable tragedy. As I sat there clutching the envelope, watching the waiters glide between tables with their silver trays, a memory clawed its way back from the darkest corners of my mind. It was the memory of the night I almost lost Emily once before. She was only 5. We were at a summer picnic hosted by a neighbor. The air smelled of grilled burgers, laughter echoed from the volleyball court, and kids darted across the grass with popsicles dripping down their hands. I remember balancing a plate while Emily tugged at my leg, hungry and impatient. Without thinking, I gave her a spring roll from the buffet table. She took one bite. Within minutes, her face flushed deep red, her lips swelled, and her small hands clawed at her throat. I froze, paralyzed with terror, as her breaths grew shallow and her eyes bulged with panic. It was a parent's worst nightmare, and I was living it. By the grace of God, another parent at the picnic carried an EpiPen. I still remember the hiss of the injection, Emily's gasp as air filled her lungs again, the tears streaming down her terrified little face as she collapsed into my arms. I held her so tightly I thought I might crush her, whispering over and over, "I'm here, sweetheart. Daddy's here. I won't let anything happen to you." That day scarred me. From then on, I carried an EpiPen in every car, every backpack, every coat pocket. I lectured teachers, babysitters, even strangers about her allergy. I became the overprotective dad people rolled their eyes at, and I didn't care. Because I knew one careless mistake could steal my daughter forever. And now, on this wedding night, staring at the folded note in my pocket, I felt that same icy fear return. Only this time, it wasn't a careless mistake. Someone had written those words intentionally. Someone wanted to harm Emily. My gaze wandered to Daniel. He was radiant, laughing as a cousin clapped him on the back. He looked free for the first time in years. I thought about the boy he used to be, before Caroline died. Back then, Daniel had been her shadow. He'd sit at the kitchen counter watching her cook, asking endless questions, sneaking bites of cookie dough. He adored his mother. When she died, something in him shattered. I'll never forget the night after her funeral. Daniel sat on the back porch in the rain, his football jersey soaked, his face pale. When I tried to sit beside him, he muttered, "She won't see me graduate. She won't see me get married." His voice cracked, and my heart broke. Since then, I'd done everything to keep him afloat. I covered tuition, helped him land internships, cheered at his college graduation with tears in my eyes. I wanted him to believe the world could still offer him joy. And when he brought Sophia home, his smile told me he finally believed it. But Emily never smiled when Sophia was around. She was only a child, but children see things adults refuse to. I'd caught Emily whispering to her stuffed rabbit late at night, saying things like, "I don't like when she stares at me," or, "Why does she always smile like that?" At first, I thought it was just childish jealousy, the fear of losing her brother's attention. But maybe she'd sensed something I didn't. The thought made my stomach churn. Had I ignored my daughter's instincts out of desperation to see my son happy? Had I blinded myself to the danger sitting right in front of us? I glanced at Sophia across the ballroom. Her gown shimmered as she clinked glasses with her bridesmaids, tilting her head just so for the photographer. She was flawless, too flawless. Everything about her felt rehearsed, like an actress playing the role of a perfect bride. When her gaze briefly flicked to our table again, I saw it. For just a split second, before her lips curved back into that practiced smile, her eyes hardened. Cold. Calculating. Watching us. I looked down at Emily, who clung to me as if she'd never let go. The jazz band swelled into another lively tune, but all I could hear was the echo of Caroline's voice from years ago, warning me, "Protect them, Richard. No matter what." The note in my pocket seemed heavier with every beat of my heart. I knew I couldn't stay silent. Not this time. Not when history threatened to repeat itself. I brushed a strand of hair from Emily's forehead and whispered, "You're safe with me. I promise." But even as the words left my mouth, doubt gnawed at me. Because deep down, I knew safety was an illusion. Someone had already tried to break through it. And if I didn't act, if I hesitated for even a moment, I might once again find myself holding my child as she struggled for air. And that was a memory I couldn't survive a second time. As I sat there in that glittering ballroom, the envelope burning in my pocket, my eyes kept drifting back to Sophia. She stood at the center of every circle, her sequined gown catching the candlelight like a net of stars. Guests swarmed around her, clinking glasses, offering congratulations, showering her with praise. To everyone else, she was the perfect bride, gracious, charming, radiant. But to me, her smile looked too sharp, her laughter too polished, her every gesture calculated like a performance. Emily pressed closer into my side, as if she could feel the chill that swept through me. She didn't need to say a word. Her silence screamed louder than anything. I thought back to the first evening Daniel had brought Sophia to my home. She'd walked in with a bottle of wine and a bouquet of lilies, her hair gleaming, her heels clicking against the tile like punctuation marks. She greeted me with a firm handshake, her smile unwavering. Daniel's eyes glowed with pride. But Emily had hidden behind the couch that night, peeking out only to retreat when Sophia crouched to greet her. "She's just shy," Sophia said smoothly, as though excusing the rejection, but her eyes had flickered with something I couldn't place. Irritation, maybe. Or calculation. That was the first crack in her flawless mask. Over the months, more followed. There was the time Sophia brought Emily a box of chocolates. "For you, sweet girl," she cooed, pressing the ribboned gift into Emily's hands. But Emily froze, her lips trembling as she whispered, "I don't want it." I remembered Sophia's jaw tightening before she pasted her smile back on, shrugging it off with, "Kids, right?" Or the Sunday dinner when Emily proudly showed me a drawing of our old house. Sophia leaned over, her voice honey-sweet, and said, "That's lovely, Emily. But maybe next time draw something happier. Houses can feel so sad. Emily's little face had fallen, and I felt the urge to snap back, but Daniel, blinded by love, laughed it off. And then there was the time Emily pulled me aside after Sophia left for the evening. Her voice trembled when she said, "Daddy, I don't think she likes me." I crouched down, kissed her forehead, and told her, "She just doesn't know you yet. Give it time." But children don't lie about feelings like that. Tonight, in the glow of chandeliers and laughter, I saw it more clearly than ever. Every time Sophia's gaze swept across the room, it landed on Emily with a flicker of disdain before snapping back to her mask of joy. I'd missed it before, or maybe I hadn't wanted to see it. But now, with that note in my pocket, I couldn't ignore it. A waiter approached our table again, this time with small plates of salad. My eyes scanned Emily's dish first, my chest tight. No shrimp. Just greens, tomato, and cheese. I exhaled quietly, but my hand stayed on the tablecloth like a guard. Sophia, across the room, raised her glass during a toast. Her smile sparkled, but her eyes darted toward us again. For a heartbeat, I thought I caught her watching Emily's plate. "Dad," Emily whispered, tugging at my sleeve. "Can I just have bread?" Her voice shook. She didn't trust her plate. And truth be told, neither did I. I tore off a piece of the dinner roll and handed it to her, nodding. "Eat this, sweetheart. Nothing else for now." Her shoulders relaxed slightly as she chewed. I glanced at Daniel, who was laughing heartily at some story his best man told. My son had been through hell, and all I'd wanted was to see him smile again. Sophia had given him that smile, or at least something that looked like it. But at what cost? In that moment, the truth pressed down on me like a stone: my son was blind. Blinded by love, blinded by hope, blinded by the desperation to fill the void Caroline's death had left behind. And while he was blinded, I saw clearly. Sophia wasn't the savior of our family. She was the threat. The cracks in her mask were widening, and soon everyone would see what Emily and I had already felt. The only question was, would I be strong enough to tear that mask off before it was too late? I brushed Emily's hair back and kissed the top of her head. Her small body leaned into me, trusting me completely. That trust both comforted me and terrified me. Because if I failed tonight, if I hesitated even for a moment, it wouldn't just be my heart that broke. It would be my daughter's life. I must have touched the envelope in my pocket a dozen times, as if pressing it would make the words disappear. But they didn't. They clung to me like smoke, suffocating me, whispering in my ear even above the laughter and music. Table 6, add shrimp to the child's plate. It wasn't just a mistake. It couldn't be. The handwriting was jagged but deliberate, the kind of scrawl that comes from a hand moving fast with intention. Every time I read it in my mind, my chest tightened, and Emily's face from that summer picnic flashed before me: blue lips, swollen throat, her tiny body writhing in terror. No. Not again. Not tonight. I glanced down at Emily. She was breaking bread into tiny pieces, stacking them carefully on her napkin as if building a small fortress. Her lips pressed into a thin line, her eyes refusing to leave mine. She didn't say it, but I heard her anyway: "Protect me, Dad." Across the ballroom, Sophia clinked glasses with another bridesmaid. Her laughter rang out, high and clear, but to me it sounded hollow. When she turned her head, her gaze skimmed the tables, and for one terrible moment, it landed squarely on Emily. I swear I saw the faintest curl at the corner of her lips before she raised her glass again. I couldn't breathe. The waiters began moving toward the kitchen, preparing for the main course. My pulse kicked into overdrive. If that note had reached the chef, if it had slipped through the chaos of orders and instructions, Emily's life could be minutes away from danger. I pushed back my chair, standing so quickly it startled the couple seated next to us. Emily grabbed my wrist. "Dad, where are you going?" "I'll be right back," I whispered, forcing a smile I didn't feel. Stay here. Don't eat anything. Promise me. Her head bobbed in a quick nod, her fingers still clutching mine until I pulled away. The hallway outside the ballroom smelled faintly of roasted garlic and wine. My shoes clicked on the marble as I made my way toward the kitchen, my heart hammering. A cluster of waiters stood near the service door, laughing softly, adjusting trays. Excuse me, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. One of them, a young man with sandy hair and a nervous smile, turned to me. You delivered the salads to table 6 earlier, right? Yes, sir, he said, confused. I pulled the folded paper from my pocket and shoved it in front of his face. Who gave you this? His expression drained of color. His eyes widened. Oh, God. That's mine. I mean, I dropped it. My grip on the paper tightened. Dropped it? He stammered, glancing around as though searching for help. A woman gave it to me. She said it was an instruction for the chef. Tu didn't read it. I was just supposed to deliver it. My voice rose. What woman? He shook his head. I don't know her name. Dark hair, tall, in a gown. She looked like part of the wedding party. Sophia. My stomach flipped. Every instinct screamed the same answer, but hearing him describe it was like being shoved into icy water. The waiter took a step back, raising his hands. I swear, sir, I didn't mean. I cut him off, my voice low and dangerous. My daughter could die because of this. His face crumpled with horror, and he nodded frantically. I'll tell the chef immediately. I'll make sure nothing with shrimp gets near your table. See that you do, I muttered, tucking the paper back into my pocket. My hands shook so badly I could hardly fold it. When I returned to the ballroom, Emily was still there, sitting perfectly still beside her untouched plate. Lucy, my sister's daughter who joined us for the wedding, had slid into the seat beside her, keeping a protective arm on her shoulder. Relief flooded me. At least Emily wasn't alone. I sank back into my chair, my jaw clenched so tightly it ached. Around me, the festivities carried on, laughter, music, toasts echoing across the hall. But all I heard was the pounding of my own heart. The note lay like a brand in my pocket, daring me to act. I could keep silent, pretend this was just a terrible misunderstanding, spare my son the humiliation of having his wedding ruined. Or I could stand up, speak the truth, and tear the mask from Sophia's face in front of everyone. My hands curled into fists beneath the table. There was no choice, not really. Because silence might mean Emily wouldn't live to see tomorrow. I looked at her, my little girl, with crumbs on her napkin fortress and fear in her eyes, and I knew I would burn the entire wedding to the ground before I let anyone harm her. I sat at that table with the paper burning in my pocket, my pulse hammering in my throat. The air felt thick, suffocating, as though the entire ballroom had been draped in invisible smoke. Around me, glasses clinked, forks scraped, laughter bubbled up like champagne fizz. Everyone else was wrapped in the glow of celebration. But for me, time had slowed to a crawl. I couldn't sit there and pretend any longer. My daughter's life depended on me. The maitre d' made his way toward the front of the ballroom, a microphone in hand, preparing to announce the main course. Waiters moved like clockwork, trays balanced, plates steaming with food. My stomach dropped when I caught sight of the gleaming shrimp risotto being carried toward a nearby table. Its scent floated in the air, sharp and briny, a cruel reminder of what could have ended up in front of Emily. I stood. My chair scraped back so suddenly the guests at our table jumped. Emily's eyes widened, panic flickering across her face. She grabbed my sleeve. "Dad, what are you doing?" she whispered. I leaned close, my voice low but firm. "Protecting you, sweetheart. Stay here with Lucy. Don't move, don't eat, don't touch anything." Lucy's head snapped up at my words. My niece had always been sharp-eyed, quick to sense trouble. She slid her arm protectively around Emily and nodded once. "I've got her, Uncle Richard." I turned on my heel before my resolve could crack. Near the bar, I spotted the young waiter I'd cornered earlier, the one who had confessed to receiving the note. He was stacking empty glasses now, trying to look busy, but when his eyes met mine, he froze. The color drained from his face. I strode toward him, pulling the crumpled note from my pocket and shoving it against his chest. "Tell me again," I demanded, my voice shaking with anger I barely kept contained. "Who gave you this?" He stammered, glancing nervously toward the kitchen doors. "Two already told you, sir." "A woman. Dark hair. Elegant gown. She looked like she belonged here." I swear I didn't know what it said. My voice rose louder than I intended. "Do you realize what this means? Do you understand that one bite of shrimp could kill my daughter?" The waiter's eyes went wide with horror, and he shook his head violently. "I didn't know. Please, I didn't read it, I just carried it." "I'm so sorry." A few nearby guests turned their heads at the commotion. Whispered voices rippled, curious eyes darting in our direction. My chest heaved, rage and terror tangled together. I forced myself to breathe, to lower my voice. Losing control wouldn't save Emily. "Think carefully. Did she say anything else? Did she tell you her name?" He shook his head miserably. "No. She just slipped me the paper and said, 'Make sure this gets to the chef.' I didn't even see where she went after that." My jaw tightened. I didn't need him to say her name. My instincts screamed it already, Sophia. I turned back toward our table, the ballroom swimming in candlelight and murmurs. Across the room, Sophia was radiant, laughing with two guests, her champagne flute glittering in her hand. She looked untouchable. Perfect. But her mask was slipping, at least for me. And tonight, I was going to rip it off. I sat back down beside Emily, forcing myself to act calm. She looked up at me with eyes too old for 10 years, eyes that understood far more than any child should. She didn't ask what I'd learned. She didn't need to. Her small hand slid into mine, trembling. The maitre d's voice boomed through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats for the main course." Waiters began gliding between tables, placing dishes in front of guests. My throat tightened as one of them set a steaming plate down in front of Emily. Instinctively, I shoved it aside before she could even glance at it. The waiter blinked at me in confusion, but I only glared until he hurried away. I couldn't wait any longer. The danger was real, the proof in my pocket. And if I stayed silent, Emily would always wonder if her father had been too afraid to protect her. I pushed back from the table again, but this time I didn't head for the bar. I walked straight toward the center of the ballroom. The microphone was still in the maitre d's hand, and before he could begin his rehearsed introduction, I reached for it. My voice cracked like a whip across the hall. "One moment, please." The jazz band faltered mid-song. Conversations died. Forks froze halfway to mouths. In seconds, the room plunged into silence, all eyes swinging toward me. At our table, Emily shrank back, her face pale. Lucy held her tighter. I swallowed hard, my palms slick with sweat. My voice shook, but I forced it to rise above the hush. "Before anyone eats, there's something I need to make clear." I raised the crumpled paper high in the air. Candlelight caught its edges, and whispers surged like a wave. "This note," I said, my voice raw, "was found under my daughter's chair. It says to add shrimp to her meal." Gasps scattered across the room. Heads turned. Eyes widened. "My daughter," I continued, my throat tight, "is severely allergic to shrimp. Even a single bite could end her life. Someone here knew that. Someone wrote this." The whispers swelled, hissing through the crowd like fire catching dry grass. Guests leaned toward one another, some shaking their heads, others pressing hands to their mouths in shock. At the head table, Daniel rose, confusion etched across his face. "Dad, what are you talking about?" "Read it yourself," I snapped, shoving the paper toward him as he hurried over. He took it, his eyes scanning the words. I watched his face pale, his hand tremble. "What the hell is this?" he muttered, his gaze darting from me to Emily. And then Sophia swept forward. Her gown glittered as she approached, her brow furrowed in a perfect mask of shock. "Richard," she said smoothly, her voice carrying across the room. "What's going on? This has to be some kind of misunderstanding." But I saw it, the flicker in her eyes, the tightness in her jaw. The mask was cracking. I took a step toward her, my voice low and sharp. "You tell me. Did you write it?" The entire ballroom seemed to lean in, waiting. The air was electric, heavy with anticipation. Sophia blinked once, then forced a laugh. "Of course not. How could you accuse me of something so absurd on my wedding day?" She turned to the crowd, her hand fluttering to her chest. "It must be a cruel prank. Maybe even jealousy." But the whispers had shifted. I heard them, saw the doubt sparking in guests' eyes. And then Lucy rose from her seat, her voice steady and cold. "She's lying." The entire room erupted in gasps. The storm had broken. When Lucy's voice cut through the ballroom, calm, cold, unflinching, every head turned. The weight of the moment pressed down on all of us. My niece stood tall beside our table, her hand still gripping Emily's shoulder protectively, her eyes locked on Sophia. "She's lying," Lucy repeated, louder this time. "Sophia gave that note." The room erupted in whispers, shock spilling across the tables like spilled wine. Forks clattered onto plates. Someone gasped audibly. Daniel, standing near me, turned toward Lucy with disbelief painted across his face. "What are you talking about?" he demanded. His voice trembled, though whether from anger or fear, I couldn't tell. Lucy didn't flinch. "I saw her. Earlier tonight, before the appetizers were served. She slipped away from the head table. I didn't know what she was doing at the time, but now it makes sense." Sophia's eyes flashed, but only for a second before she composed herself again. Her lips curved into a smile that was too sweet, too sharp. "That's ridiculous. You must be imagining things." "I don't imagine things when my cousin's life is on the line," Lucy shot back, her tone sharp as glass. The tension coiled so tightly I thought the chandeliers above might shatter. Daniel stepped between them, his voice rising. "Lucy, stop. This is my wedding day. Don't start." But Lucy cut him off, her eyes blazing with fury I'd never seen in her before. "Daniel, wake up. Do you really think this is a prank? Do you really believe anyone else here would want Emily dead?" The word dead landed like a thunderclap. Guests froze, their whispers silenced. My throat burned, my pulse pounding. Emily buried her face against Lucy's arm, trembling. Sophia's mask slipped just a little more. She reached for Daniel's hand, her eyes glistening as if tears might spill. "You can't believe this, can you? On our wedding day? It's jealousy, Daniel. Can't you see? She's always resented me, always tried to come between us. She's inventing lies because she can't stand that I'm your wife now." The venom in her tone was barely hidden beneath the sugar. But Lucy stood taller. "If I'm lying, then you won't mind if they check the security cameras, will you?" The air cracked with silence. Every guest seemed to hold their breath. Sophia froze, her grip on Daniel's hand tightening. Her lips trembled. For the first time all night, she didn't have a quick answer. I stepped forward, my voice booming, harsher than I'd ever heard it. "That's enough. You endangered my daughter's life. The proof is right here in this note. And if the cameras confirm it, every mask you've worn will fall. I slapped the paper down on the nearest table so hard the glasses rattled. Daniel's face crumpled, torn between the woman he'd just married and the family standing before him. His eyes darted from Sophia to Emily, who was still clutching Lucy's arm, her face pale with fear. Sophia's composure cracked. "You can, this isn't," she stammered, her voice breaking, before she turned sharply toward Lucy. "Shut up. You've always been jealous of me. Always hanging around Daniel like some pathetic little shadow. You want him for yourself, don't you? That's why you're lying." Gasps surged across the ballroom. Guests exchanged looks, some covering their mouths in shock. The perfect bride was unraveling before their eyes. Lucy's cheeks flushed, but her voice was steady. "This isn't about me, Sophia. This is about a child. About Emily. And you were willing to risk her life just to get rid of the one person who might stand between you and Daniel." The silence that followed was deafening. Even the band had stopped pretending to play. Every eye in the room was fixed on Sophia. Daniel's voice finally cracked, raw and desperate. "Sophia, tell me it isn't true. Tell me you didn't do this." Sophia blinked, tears spilling at last, but they looked wrong, forced, a performance unraveling. "Daniel, please. You know me. I would never." "Answer the question," he roared, slamming his fist on the table. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Sophia flinched, her mask finally shattering. Her lips trembled, her gaze darting from face to face, looking for someone to side with her. But no one did. Every guest's eyes were hard, condemning. And then, as if the dagger needed twisting, a timid voice rose from the back of the room. "I'm sorry." Heads turned. It was Chloe, Sophia's younger sister, barely 18, standing near the dessert table. Her face was blotched with tears, her hands trembling at her sides. "It wasn't supposed to go this far," Chloe whispered. "She asked me to give the note to a waiter. I didn't know what it said. I swear I didn't. But she told me to, and her voice broke as sobs overtook her. The room gasped again, louder this time. It was the sound of truth breaking free, undeniable. Sophia spun toward her sister, her face twisted with rage. "You stupid girl. How dare you betray me?" Chloe stumbled back, shaking her head violently. "No, Sophia. How dare you? He's just a little girl. Emily's only 10. How could you?" Sophia lunged as if to silence her, but Daniel caught her arm mid-motion. His face was ashen, his jaw clenched with fury and heartbreak. "Enough." She struggled against his grip, but Daniel's voice was ice. "You tried to kill my sister. At our wedding." The words hung in the air like a curse. Sophia froze, her chest heaving, her eyes darting wildly, but there was no escape now. Every mask she'd worn, every practiced smile, every carefully staged laugh, it had all crumbled into dust. The ballroom, once filled with celebration, was now a courtroom, and she stood guilty in front of judge and jury. Guests began to murmur, louder this time, their disgust filling the silence she left behind. "Unbelievable. A child, for God's sake. She's a monster." Sophia's sobs turned into shrieks, her voice sharp with desperation. "They're lying. All of them. You can't do this to me, Daniel. You promised me forever." But Daniel's hand fell away from her arm as if she were poison. His shoulders sagged, his face hollow. "Forever doesn't include murder." The words cut deeper than any blade. Sophia staggered, her eyes wide, her mouth opening and closing without sound. For the first time all night, she had nothing left to say. Emily peeked out from Lucy's arms, her small voice trembling but clear. "Daddy, she hates me." My heart broke into 1,000 shards. I crouched beside her, taking her tiny hand in mine. "No one will ever hurt you again, sweetheart. Not while I'm here." The room fell silent once more, every guest watching as Daniel sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands. Sophia stood alone, trembling, her gown sparkling uselessly under the chandeliers. And I realized something then: the wedding wasn't ruined. The illusion was. The truth had come out, and though it burned, it was better than living inside a lie. The silence that followed felt endless. Sophia stood frozen in the center of the ballroom, her gown shimmering like shattered glass, her face twisted in fury and fear. Around her, the crowd whispered with disgust, some shaking their heads, others openly glaring. The weight of 100 eyes pressed down, stripping her of the perfect mask she had worked so hard to wear. Finally, the maitre d' stepped forward with 2 hotel security guards in tow. Their voices were firm, polite but unyielding. "Ma'am, we need you to come with us." Sophia whipped her head toward Daniel, her voice cracking. "You're just going to let them drag me out? After everything? After I saved you from your pathetic little life?" Daniel didn't move. His face was pale, his hands trembling at his sides. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely more than a whisper, but it carried across the room like a sentence. "You didn't save me. You tried to destroy the only family I have left." Sophia's mouth opened, then closed. She looked around the ballroom, but there was no sympathy left, no ally to cling to. Even her sister Chloe stood back, tears streaming down her cheeks, refusing to meet her gaze. When the guards gently but firmly guided her toward the exit, her cries turned shrill, desperate. "You'll regret this. All of you. You'll see who I really am." But no one followed. No one answered. The heavy doors closed behind her, and for the first time all night, the room exhaled. I sank back into my chair, Emily sliding into my lap as though she had been holding her breath for hours. Her little body shook with silent sobs. I wrapped my arms around her, burying my face in her hair. "It's over, sweetheart. She can't touch you now." Lucy sat beside us, her own face pale but her eyes fierce. She stroked Emily's back, whispering soothing words. I caught her gaze, and in that moment I felt something deeper than gratitude. She had been the shield when I wavered, the voice when I couldn't speak. Daniel stumbled toward us, his eyes bloodshot, his shoulders slumped with the weight of shame. He dropped to his knees in front of Emily. "I'm so sorry," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I didn't see it. I didn't protect you. Can you forgive me?" Emily's tear-streaked face lifted, her eyes wide and tired. She didn't answer with words. Instead, she wrapped her little arms around his neck, holding him tightly. His sobs shook his body as he clung to her. I placed a hand on my son's shoulder, feeling the tremor in his frame. "She fooled you," I said quietly. "Don't blame yourself for trusting when all you wanted was love. But don't forget what matters most. Family first. Always." He nodded against Emily's hair, his tears wetting her dress. The wedding, of course, was over. Guests excused themselves quietly, some murmuring condolences, others shaking their heads in disbelief. A few came to squeeze my shoulder, whispering, "You did the right thing." But most left without finishing their meals, the air too heavy to celebrate anything more. When the last guest was gone, the ballroom looked like a battlefield, glasses half full, plates abandoned, flowers wilting under the weight of truth. Later that night, back at our home, we sat together in silence around the kitchen table. Emily held a cup of cocoa Lucy had made, her fingers still trembling as she sipped. Daniel stared at his hands, guilt etched into every line of his face. Finally, he looked at me, his voice hollow. "Dad, I almost brought a monster into our lives. I almost lost Emily." I leaned forward, gripping his hand firmly. "Almost doesn't count. We stopped it. You still have your sister. You still have us. And you've learned something you'll never forget, love isn't about charm or beauty. It's about trust. About safety. About sacrifice. His eyes filled again, but this time he nodded. Slowly, painfully, I could see the truth sinking in. In the days that followed, the story spread. Family called, friends whispered, even strangers in town spoke about the wedding scandal. Some criticized Daniel for being blind. Others pitied him for being betrayed. But none of that mattered. What mattered was Emily's laughter returning, hesitant at first, then brighter each day. Lucy became her anchor. She braided Emily's hair before school, checked her lunchbox twice for allergens, walked her to class with a protective hand on her back. Emily began drawing again, not sad houses, but kites and suns and wide-open skies. And Daniel slowly, he began to heal. I would catch him watching Lucy sometimes, his gaze filled with something deeper than gratitude. I didn't press. Some things take time to grow, and I wasn't about to rush it. But I saw the possibility there, a seed planted in the ashes of betrayal. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the trees, Emily curled up beside me on the porch swing. Her voice was soft, thoughtful. "Daddy, you looked under the table. You listened to me. That's why I'm safe." I kissed her hair, my throat tight. "I'll always listen, sweetheart. Always." The stars began to appear, one by one, above the darkening sky. For the first time in years, I felt a fragile kind of peace settling over us. We had been through fire, but we had come out together. And those scars would remain, though the memory of that folded paper would haunt me forever. I knew one thing with certainty: family, real family, is worth every battle. Because love that is true doesn't hide in shadows. It doesn't whisper poison into the dark. It stands in the light, unafraid. And as long as I was alive, I would make sure that was the only kind of love my children ever knew.